You ever have a day where you come home expecting peace, but instead you walk straight into a nightmare? I did. I pulled up to my cabin, ready for a weekend of quiet, only to find police lights flashing in my driveway. A furious woman in a designer suit waving her phone and a stranger barricaded in my guest house. I thought I was dealing with just another entitled guest who overstayed her welcome. I had no idea she was HOA Karen's niece and that she was out for vengeance. And I definitely didn't expect the police to show up and turn my quiet weekend into a full-blown showdown. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started, and trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Pine Ridge is the kind of place people dream about retiring to. Tall pines, a lake that catches the morning sun just right, and neighbors who mostly keep to themselves. I bought my cabin here for the quiet, the kind of quiet you can't buy in the city. I rent out the guest house on weekends, mostly to hikers and families looking for a break from the noise. It's a good setup until the day it wasn't. I'd been away for a few weeks, volunteering at a rural clinic upstate. The work was hard, the hours long, but it was honest. Coming home, I was looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower, a cup of coffee on the porch, and maybe a lazy afternoon with a book. Instead, I pulled up to a scene straight out of a soap opera. There was a police cruiser parked at an angle. Lights off, but engine running. And there, standing at the edge of my gravel drive, was Karen. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, you know that type impeccably dressed, always on the phone, always ready to enforce a rule you never agreed to. She was the self-appointed queen of Pine Ridge, and she wore her authority like a badge. Next to her, a young woman in oversized sunglasses and a designer tracksuit was pacing. Phone glued to her ear, voice rising in shrill bursts. I didn't recognize her, but I recognized the attitude. I killed the engine and just sat for a moment, letting the silence of the woods try to settle my nerves. It didn't work. I stepped out, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, and walked up the drive. Karen spotted me and immediately launched into her performance. There he is. Officer, that's the owner. He's the one I told you about. He's been letting strangers stay here without proper HOA approval. And now his guest refuses to leave. The officer, a tired-looking man with a notepad, gave me a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Sir, can I see some ID? I handed it over, trying to keep my voice calm. This is my property. One, rent out the guest house. I have all the permits. Karen's niece, though I didn't know that yet, stormed over, waving her phone. You can't just kick me out. I paid for the whole weekend. This is harassment. I glanced at Karen, who gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We have rules here, you know, and your little side business is causing problems. The officer handed back my ID. Look, sir, your guest says she has a right to stay. She claims you're trying to evict her without notice. I took a breath, feeling the tension coil in my chest. She was supposed to check out this morning. I have the reservation right here. I pulled up the app on my phone, showing the checkout time. She's been ignoring my calls and texts. The officer nodded, jotting something down. Ma'am? He said to the guest, do you have proof of an extended reservation? She glared at me, then at Karen, then back at the officer. My aunt said I could stay as long as I wanted. She's on the HOA board. She has authority here. That was the first time I realized who I was dealing with. Karen's niece? Of course. The entitlement, the attitude, it all made sense. But what didn't make sense was why Karen was so invested in this. Was this just family loyalty? Or was there something more going on? Let me ask you, what would you do if you came home to find a stranger refusing to leave your property, backed up by the most powerful woman in your neighborhood? Would you stand your ground, or would you walk away and let them win? Drop your answer in the comments, because I was about to find out just how far Karen and her niece were willing to go. The officer tried to mediate. Look, this is a civil matter. If you want her out, you'll have to go through the proper eviction process. In the meantime, I suggest everyone stays calm. Karen's niece smirked, arms crossed. See, you can't touch me. I felt my jaw clench. You're trespassing. Your reservation is over. I need you to leave. She shrugged, turning back to her phone. Not going anywhere. My aunt says I can stay. Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice. You should be careful, you know. The HOA takes violations very seriously. You wouldn't want to lose your rental privileges, would you? It was a threat. Plain and simple. But I wasn't about to back down. Not in my own home? The officer left, clearly done with the drama. Karen and her niece lingered, whispering, shooting me dirty looks. I went inside, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with anger. This was my home, my sanctuary. And now it felt invaded. I checked the guest house from the kitchen window. The lights were on, curtains drawn. I could see the shadow of someone moving inside. I thought about calling a locksmith, but I knew that would only escalate things. Instead, I decided to wait her out. She had to leave eventually, right? But as the hours passed, it became clear she wasn't going anywhere. And neither was Karen. Night fell over Pine Ridge, but the tension in my chest didn't ease. I sat in the dark, watching the guest house window glow like a warning light. Every so often, I'd see Karen's niece pacing, her silhouette sharp against the blinds, phone pressed to her ear. Was she calling Karen a lawyer? Or just someone to complain about the unreasonable landlord? I tried to distract myself, but my mind kept circling the same question. Why was Karen so determined to help her niece? Was this just family, or was there something more at play? I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind, set my nerves on edge. I kept replaying the officer's words. This is a civil matter, but it didn't feel civil. It felt like a siege. I was a guest in my own home, tiptoeing around, waiting for the next move. The next morning, I woke to voices outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw Karen and her niece with a burly man in a maintenance uniform, clipboard in hand. They were pointing at the guest house, then at my main cabin. I stepped outside, heart pounding. "Morning," I called, just trying to keep my tone neutral. Karen turned, her smile razor sharp. "Good morning. We're just conducting a routine HOA inspection. There have been some complaints about your property." I stared at her, incredulous. "Complaints? From who?" She shrugged. "Anonymous, of course. We take all reports seriously. Safety first." Her niece smirked, arms folded. The maintenance guy avoided my eyes, scribbling something on his clipboard. I felt a surge of anger. "You can't just show up and inspect my property without notice." Karen's smile didn't falter. "Actually, under the HOA bylaws, we can. Section 1 for B emergency inspections. You should really read the handbook." I wanted to argue, but I knew it would be pointless. Karen thrived on confrontation. She wanted me to lose my temper, to give her an excuse to escalate. Instead, I bit my tongue and watched as they circled my property, pointing out imaginary violations. After they left, I checked the guest house. The door was locked from the inside. I knocked, but Karen's niece ignored me. I texted her, called her, even slid a note under the door. No response. She was digging in, and Karen was helping her. By noon, I'd had enough. I called the county sheriff's office, explained the situation, and asked what my options were. The deputy on the phone was sympathetic, but firm. "If she's overstayed her reservation, you can start the eviction process. But it'll take time. In the meantime, don't do anything that could be seen as harassment." I hung up, frustration boiling over. Was this really happening? Was I about to be forced out of my own property by a guest who refused to leave and an HOA president with a personal vendetta? I decided to document everything. I took photos of the guest house, screenshots of the reservation, copies of every message I'd sent. I even set up a camera facing the driveway, just in case. If Karen wanted a fight, I'd give her one by the book. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines, I heard a car pull up. Another police cruiser. My stomach dropped. I stepped outside to find two officers, one I recognized from the day before. And a new face, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Evening, sir," she said. "We received a call about a disturbance at this address." I glanced at the guest house. The curtains twitched. No disturbance here. Just trying to get my guest to leave after her reservation ended. The male officer nodded. "We spoke to Ms. Phillips, Karen," I muttered. He continued, "and her niece. They claim you've been harassing them, trying to force her out." I felt my jaw tighten. "I have everything documented. She's trespassing." I haven't set foot inside the guest house since she refused to leave. The female officer studied me for a long moment. "Mind if we take a look around?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." They walked the property, taking notes, asking questions. Karen and her niece watched from a distance, whispering. After a while, the officers returned. Here's the deal, the woman said. You're within your rights to ask her to leave, but you can't physically remove her. If you want her out, you'll need to file for eviction. In the meantime, keep your distance. I nodded, feeling defeated. Understood. As they left, Karen's niece shot me a triumphant look. Karen, meanwhile, lingered, her eyes cold and calculating. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said quietly. If you just let her stay a few more days, we could avoid all this unpleasantness. I stared at her, searching for any sign of humanity. Why are you doing this, Karen? What do you really want? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Sometimes people need to be reminded who's in charge. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the stars, replaying every moment. Was this really about her niece, or was Karen using this as an excuse to flex her power? I thought about the other homeowners. The stories I'd heard people fined for minor violations, bullied into silence. Some even selling their homes just to get away from her. I realized then that this wasn't just about me. So it's about control. Karen wanted to send a message. No one challenged her authority and won, but I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The next morning, I woke to chaos. My phone buzzed with messages neighbors warning me that Karen was calling an emergency HOA meeting. The rumor mill was in overdrive. Some said I'd been running an illegal business. Others claimed I'd threatened Karen's niece. The truth didn't matter. The narrative was being written without me. I decided to show up at the meeting. If Karen wanted a public spectacle, I'd give her one. But I wasn't going to play by her rules. As I walked into the community hall, all eyes turned to me. Karen stood at the front, her niece by her side, both of them radiating smug satisfaction. The room buzzed with tension. Karen tapped the microphone. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We have a serious situation involving one of our residents and a guest who feels unsafe. I raised my hand. May I speak? She hesitated, then nodded, clearly not expecting me to confront her. I stepped forward, voice steady. I have documentation of every interaction, every message, every attempt I made to resolve this peacefully. I have proof that my guest's reservation ended and that she refused to leave. I have nothing to hide. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's niece glared at me, but I held her gaze. Ask yourself, I said, who benefits from this drama? Who stands to gain by making an example out of me? The room fell silent, the question hanging in the air. The silence in the hall was thick, every eye fixed on Karen and her niece. For a moment, I wondered if I'd just made things worse for myself. But then, from the back of the room, a voice broke through. He's right. This isn't the first time. It was Mrs. Jensen, the quietest neighbor on the block. Last year, Karen fined me for a garden gnome. Said it was a safety hazard. I paid, but I never forgot. A ripple of agreement moved through the crowd. Others began to share their own stories fines for mailbox colors. Threats over lawn length, late-night calls about suspicious activity. The mood shifted. Karen's power, built on fear and isolation, was starting to crack. Karen's niece, sensing the tide turning, tried to regain control. He's just mad because he got caught breaking the rules. My aunt is only trying to keep this community safe. But her voice wavered, the confidence slipping. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not a villain, but someone caught in a game she didn't fully understand. That's when the police arrived. 2 cruisers, lights flashing, officers stepping into the hall with calm authority. The room fell silent again, tension snapping back like a rubber band. The lead officer addressed the crowd. We're here regarding a report of trespassing and possible harassment. We need to speak with Ms. Phillips and her niece. Karen's face went pale. Her niece's bravado vanished. The officers led them outside, the crowd partying in stunned silence. I followed, heart pounding, unsure what would happen next. Outside, the officers explained. We've received multiple complaints about harassment, unauthorized entry, and misuse of HOA authority. We have reason to believe there's been a pattern of intimidation and possible fraud. They turned to me. We'd like to hear your side of the story. I handed over my documentation, messages, reservation records, photos, everything. The officers listened, nodding, taking notes. Karen tried to interrupt, but the lead officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, we'll get to you. For now, please wait." As the investigation unfolded, the truth came out. Karen's niece had never paid for the extra nights. She'd used her aunt's position to bully her way into staying, and Karen had backed her up, hoping to make an example of me. But the evidence was clear. The officers thanked me for my cooperation and told Karen and her niece they'd be in touch. The next day, the HOA board called an emergency meeting without Karen. The community, finally united, voted to remove her from her position. Her niece left town that same week, her reputation in tatters. For the first time in weeks, Pine Ridge felt peaceful again. I sat on my porch that evening, the lake calm, the air sweet with pine. It stood my ground not just for myself, but for everyone who'd ever been pushed around by someone with too much power and not enough heart. And as the sun set, I realized something. Sometimes the quietest people make the loudest stand. So, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have fought back or walked away? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life drama and justice. And don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a new episode. And if you've got your own wild HOA or Karen story, share it below or send it in. I might just feature it in a future video. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the quietest people make the loudest stand. Stay strong, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next one.